Hi, Shrutkirti. Thank you so much for being a part of this series. Just for our viewers, this is the third episode in the series of Women and the Relationship with Money. And I have been talking to some of my clients, women clients, with whom I have been working for a while. And the reason I'm talking to these clients of mine is because they have been personalities who have taken considerable financial decisions for themselves or their families, and that's not something that is very common. I'm glad to have Shrutkirti Vashist with me on the call today. And Shrutkirti, I have been working with you for over a year now. And before we go deeper into your journey with money, why don't you tell the audience a little bit about what do you do?
Thanks a lot, Shruti, and brilliant initiative. First of all, glad to see this, coming to life. So I'm Shrutkirti, and I am an engineer and an MBA graduate from NMIMS Mumbai. After that, currently I am been working in the tech SaaS sales field for the last 8+ years, and a hardcore tech seller. And I also look at my own financial management and investment. And like you said, I've been associated with you for the last 1 year, and I'm very glad Leap Club brought us together, because I think we were able to make this association only thanks to Leap. But yeah, very happy for this initiative, and very keen to hear your questions and maybe give some of my personal insights.
Absolutely. So, Shrutkirti, like a lot of people that I speak to, they start thinking about putting their money to use only after they have, let's say, worked for a few years, or they're married, they have responsibilities. You are somebody who is single and you live with your parents, and I mean, naturally, you have maybe limited responsibilities or limited dependencies on yourself, right? And a lot of people, who would be in a similar situation, they would be too comfortable with a decent salary that's coming in, very little expenses, and they are also the kind of people who don't think so much about investing. But I remember when I spoke to you for the first time, you were absolutely clear about what you wanted to do with your money, putting your money to work. So I want to understand, where did that clarity really stem from?
Great question, Shruti, and I will not shy away from saying that I've been blessed to be in a situation where I've been able to save quite a bit of money,
Mhm.
and like you said, not just because of the limited responsibility, because I did take some education debt and all of that. I have been successfully able to clear myself, but I think just having a little means and ways to be able to save from personal situation to personal situation gives some kind of advantage. But to your question on how did I get that clarity, right? I think I was very clear from the start. Ever since childhood, I've seen both my parents manage their personal finances on a personal level, right? So while they come together and they discuss how they're running the house, how they're growing themselves, they have never really interfered with each other's finances. So they both are doctors with their individual practices, and they have both had careers which are probably different, right, because they run their own different individual practices. And I realized that from a very early start that the only way to be truly independent is to be financially independent, right? It becomes a great enabler to for you to accomplish whatever it is that you want to accomplish in life, right? And how did I get that clarity, and why did I not get into that comfort zone, which I do believe that a lot of people do, even if they are in my situation, or maybe they have more responsibilities than me. I'm someone who believes that we need to continuously invest in our growth, whether it is from a professional standpoint, whether it is from a financial standpoint. And I believe that you should always want to make your money work for you, because earning is just never enough. And I needed the right advisor for this, because I knew that this was a goal I had in mind. But at the same time, I think I wanted guidance. And I remember very distinctly taking a class during my MBA year. This was the second year, and somebody from an external consultancy had come and spoken to us about investments. I think that really, gave me that light bulb moment that there are people who are consistently investing a portion of whatever they earn on a month-on-month basis into SIPs, for example. right? And this person spoke purely from an SIP perspective, and that really gave me that first stepping stone to realize, okay, this is something that I should be focusing on once I start making money. Now this was a time when we were had all been placed, but we had not really started getting our paychecks. So that initial induction into, start thinking about that from an early stage, I think it really gave me that food for thought. And you can always come back to it, even if you don't start doing it immediately after you get your first job. Maybe a couple of years later, you should just start early on, is what I personally believe.
So I think a large part of the trigger was coming, number one, by seeing your parents being so, financially independent. And I mean, also, I think having both parents as working parents has a big, big influence in the way things shaped up for you. And secondly, you mentioned that, one particular session at your management school helped you think about it early on. But you also have a network of, friends, women with whom you work, you've studied in the college. Do you think that everybody in your circle thinks alike? Are women in your network talking so much about investments, growing money, wealth creation, and so on?
This is so true, Shruti, because I have been more and more feeling that why are not more of my peers speaking about this? I think a lot of times we are just culturally conditioned to not speak about money, right? You think about, you think about even our celebrities, for example, right? Well, I mean, what did we learn from Citadel when Priyanka Chopra said that, it's the first time that she has received pay parity, right? And all the years that she was in Bollywood, she never received pay parity. This is just something that can happen once you start speaking about it and putting your foot down, right? And it really, sometimes hurts me that I'm not able to have these conversations with a lot of my peers who are just either being hesitant, or like you said, they're in that zone where they're constantly thinking, I'll do it tomorrow, or maybe I'll do it in a few months, right? So they're just putting that off, not realizing that the earlier they start, the better. But I think coming back to the cultural thing, we as a culture are taught that it's uncouth, or maybe unclassy to speak about money, right? And women especially, the minute we start speaking money, we are told that don't be money minded and don't bring up the subject, right? How many times have we gone to our friends and boasted about a piece of jewelry, or maybe something that we bought which was at a very higher value? We will always try to underplay the value, boasting about our negotiation skills instead, right? So we are, as a culture, women are taught that don't speak large numbers and don't speak about money as much. I think that that needs to change. And it's about time that, we as a whole generation, especially, our generation, maybe the millennials, the zillennials, and the Gen Z, now we have now started talking about this a lot more. So if I look at discussion forums or common groups, we are more and more sharing this interest of discussing money. But I think it's just the tip of the iceberg. I think I wish that, we could gather over the weekend just to discuss this, rather than, have other topics that we rather discuss. So very valid point. And I really wish that, we have more such conversations.
So, Shrutkirti, I mean, you mentioned that overall, I mean, money discussions are not very prevalent, right? But even at your
Yeah.
workspace, or I mean, like, when you're out with your friends, do you see that men are more comfortable talking about investing? I mean, like, even amongst a lot of my men friends, they would still ask, okay, where are you investing? What's a new thing in town? But a lot of women, if you look at women specific groups, and this is my experience, I'm telling you, that they would probably be talking about a couple of other things, maybe travel, maybe experiences, maybe personal relationships, but not investments. I mean, there are very few people who come. I mean, maybe because I'm in this profession, there are few people who come and talk to me about this. But a lot of my other friends have said that they don't have these conversations with their girlfriends, right? So do you think that there is an upbringing, societal conditioning problem that women have been subject to, because of which women are not discussing this, but men are still, having these discussions in their groups?
Yeah, absolutely, Shruti. 100% with you on this. You see, there are two parts to it. One is, of course, the cultural aspect. Like, right, I said, if you look at our generational conditioning, we have not been exactly taught money management, right? We have been told to suppress that part and, not actively speak about it, because traditionally, we have been seen as caregivers and not providers, right? And the minute you switch over from a caregiving to a provider role, you'll start thinking economics, right? So that's one. The second is, if you look at our education curriculum, we are not taught about financial management. If we start seeding that in the education itself, both men, women, and everybody else will start learning about it. I don't remember doing my taxes in school. I don't remember, learning about investments or finances in school. And I maybe had a brush with it thanks to my, MBA and, some courses that we take during management school. But if I had not done that, maybe my knowledge would have also been limited. So I think it's really important that we start making this change at a grassroots level so that kids end up learning about finances at a very early stage, right? So yeah, I think you're right when you say that men tend to discuss this more than women, and there is definitely a cultural nuance to it. But I think it's changing. It's changing very slowly, but it's changing for the better for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I have also come across, some of these entities which are doing financial literacy for children. But that, I mean, in my personal experience, I think that change has been very, very slow. I'll tell you one example. When I was in Delhi, I had approached one of these universities to do, sessions, a couple of sessions on how do you really think about savings, investing, and wealth creation. And these were all students in their graduation college years, right? And the university management came and told me that, look, you know what, they're going to sit for interviews, and you need to teach them equity research because that's what they're going to be asked about. So saving, investing is not something they're interested in. Can you do equity research for us? So I was very surprised, right? Like at an institution level where we are, I mean, education institutions are about, um, I think, inculcating the right kind of seeds in our minds, right? We haven't been subject to these education frameworks, neither at home nor at school or college. But even now, a lot of these education institutions, because they work with a commercial standpoint, they have to report placement numbers. They still don't want to talk about this. They still don't want to talk about how compounding really manifests into your lives, right? And I think, I mean, that is change that is coming. And I hope by the time our kids have grown up, I mean, they are better at it. Because clearly, I remember growing up, we had these savings discussions, but there was no wealth creation discussion, no investment discussion. And I want to know from you, because you had working parents, right? I, for example, my mother was a homemaker, so the dynamics were very different. But you had working parents. Did your parents have these conversations on the dinner table with you in terms of, apart from savings, things like explaining you concepts of inflation, why you need to think about, let's say, did they have discussions around retirement corpus in front of you? Have you been part of these conversations much before than you started working?
So I wouldn't say we had these specific conversations around a retirement corpus or specific instruments around investment, because I think even they had a very limited understanding of, like you said, wealth creation aspects. So for them, it was more around sustenance, paying off debt, upgrading their lifestyle, just doing better in life overall. But what I did learn from them, inadvertently, was how to make real estate investments, right? Because that was an area that I think they both focused in. And I think that those concepts are very generational. Like there is a generation of people who believe in hard cash, then there's a generation of people who believes in real estate investment, then there's one who completely wants to be on crypto and digital. So it changes from generation to generation. But I did get a sneak peek into how you can, multiply your money by using the right investment tools. So while investment is a lot about economical behavior, it stems from how you think about money, what has ingrained in you, what is your behavior aspect, which manifests in your finances as well. I believe if you get a little peek into any of these instruments, right? For example, I know people who don't have insurance, for their parents, for instance, because their parents never thought about it, right? And this particularly goes for people who may have possibly held government jobs, right? So the minute that they retired, they may not have had a separate insurance policy, right? And this is again is about us, this aspect is about lack of education. If you just knew that, having a term insurance is important, then the minute you grow older, you wouldn't be left clueless, right? So thankfully, from that aspect, I think my parents, without directly educating me, just simply imbibed in me the importance of, having investments, whether it's in real estate. They spoke about some friend of theirs who might have incurred losses in the stock market, right? So they're very wary of that, whereas if you look at my personal belief, I'm not wary of the stock market. So it's very personal from a belief standpoint and from a behavior standpoint. But just having that understanding of how investment is important and how insurance is important, I think really gives you that basic understanding and fundamental, that yes, when I grow up and when I have responsibilities and when I start making money, I have to do an allocation into these things.
Absolutely. In fact, on your point about government employees not having insurance when they retire, even private employees don't have insurance when they retire, and there are so many people I talk to who are totally relying on the corporate insurances and not taking that. But that's separate. Shrutkirti, you work in a company which is extremely employee friendly, and
Yeah.
I know for a fact that you have, Google has an entity which works for financial education for the employees, assistance for investments. Apart
Yeah.
from that, at what point did you feel that you wanted to talk to a human advisor outside of what means and facilities was already available to you?
Yeah, that's a great point, Shruti, because we sometimes just don't know where to start, right? And in those cases, we either look for peers who can guide us or friends who can guide us. And because women have these conversations much less than men, we may not have common friend circles who can tell us where to take that first step, right? So I was, just looking for, I was at a place where I did not have the time or the resources to educate myself to a level where I could become an expert on this. And hence, I was just looking for somebody who can guide me, who probably has more understanding of this, has obviously, a professional expertise in this. And that's when I realized that maybe I need a personal touch and I need a human touch. I did reach out to a few investment managers, and maybe I'll share a side story with you. Again, back when I was in my management classes, one of the sessions that we, got to attend was around wealth management. And before I had attended that session, I had no idea how high net individuals' wealth is managed, right? So all through my life, I might have wondered who manages my favorite actress's wealth, who manages her endorsements. So at the back of my mind, it was always, oh, there must be a CA who does this, right? But it's not. There's a whole full-fledged team of professionals who's guiding you and managing your wealth. And this goes, once you've reached a 50 CR or 100 CR or whatever threshold that is for asset management companies. And that again was a peek into, how the people who made it big in life truly make it big, because well, they have somebody managing this aspect of their life to a certain extent so that they can focus on what their core talent is while outsourcing this to somebody who knows what they're doing, right? So that was, I think, my mindset as well, that I need somebody who can take care of this, because I already have a very consuming job and I will not be able to invest my full time or do justice to the kind of returns that I'm expecting. And that's when I think 3 4 years into my first job, I decided that I need guidance in this area. Thankfully, there were quite a few people at SAP, which was my previous organization, who spoke about the importance of starting this early. And these were just colleagues and incidentally men who told me that, you should start by the time you're 25. If you are this at this age, you're almost touching 30, you may be a little late, but never too late to start. So start now, right? And I think that gave me a lot of confidence that yes, this is, I think, the right time to start. And that's when I think I started looking for somebody actively. Now, in my pursuit of finding somebody who would do this for me, I did come across a few investment managers. They were part of large MNCs who manage securities, who manage wealth as well. And I realized that I am at the expense of sounding like a Gen Z. I'll say the vibes were off, right? But at the end of the day, I wanted somebody who guides me, who I trust, and who I know will keep my money safe. Now that's the very basic principle. But additionally, I wanted somebody who's not overly conservative, who understands what boundaries are, right? So whenever you do like a vibe check with a personal investment manager, you try to understand where they are also coming from, right? And incidentally, all the managers that I had met so far were all men. And I just somehow felt that the energy levels and the kind of questions that they would ask me were again nudging me to a very traditional path, right? Whether it was about marriage, whether it was about owning houses, or whether it was about, all the traditional questions that typically people will ask you. And I realized, I needed somebody who understands my beliefs and my pursuits. Two, I want somebody who is probably, for the lack of a better word, younger, right? And third, who also comes from a very similar background, so that they understand my personal journey and hence the possible goals that I will dedicate my finances to, right? So that's where, after not matching with a few of these other managers, I found CAGR, and thankfully things have been great since then.
Yeah, I think thanks for explaining that so beautifully, Shrutkirti. But I think that was very visionary what you said about celebrities, right? Having that thought in your head at that age, that
Mm.
people make big because somebody is doing it professionally for them. I think that's in my mind I was like, wow, I didn't know you were thinking like that. But I think that's a very, very visionary thing to do. And I also think that's the reason you were able to probably set aside a significant chunk of your surplus into investments every month. One of the questions that a lot of people ask me is that when you start investing early, how do you really create that balance between expenses and investments? Because when one starts earning, the first few years, it's the first time they've gotten the freedom, the autonomy to spend, right? And most of the people, I mean, you for one had maybe a little more surplus than an average individual does. But still, I mean, how do you create that balance in your circle? Because I'm sure there'll be more people who would be spending way more than you do, right? So what kind of a spender are you, number one? Number two, how do you create that balance?
This is a fantastic question, because my ex-boss used to often tell me, you don't know how to spend, because I always had this frugal approach to spending, where I believe I would only spend on things that are important to me, right? But then that's a very, again, it's a very personal thing, like how you want to spend your money, what is important to you, how you allocate to what. So I think I will just say one thing, that I personally believe one should not upgrade their lifestyle overnight. You should remain to live exactly the way you've been living, without thinking that maybe you've turned Jay-Z or Drake overnight, right? So unless you are making those $1 million, I think it's very important that you stay humble, you stay grounded. And there is no point in buying no lavish things which are not going to matter a few years down the line, and most importantly are depreciating assets, right? Not to say that you stop enjoying life. I buy what I want, and it's just that I'm very discerning about the things that I want to buy. And for example, like you said, we are a generation of people who are focused on experiences. So I personally love travel, and I would loosen my purse strings if it's an experience, because I'll cherish that experience rather than investing in an expensive handbag, or a piece of jewelry or a watch, right? So one is, of course, you have to be discerning about where you spend your money. Two, you have to be grounded, in the sense that, and this is again coming from maybe my middle class values, because I grew up that way. You don't necessarily have to live as if you are living in a fairy tale, or where you are spending only on luxury products. So just try to also keep a mental check of the amount of money that you have spent that month, so that you can track where you are spending. And if you feel that that bucketing is going a little haywire, and you ended up spending a lot more on something that you feel maybe you shouldn't have spent, then just course correct, and change the way that you would spend in the next few months. And the last thing I would say is that one has to take cognizance for being a balanced spender, right? It's a very personal discipline choice, right? You have to be disciplined about it. Two, you don't have to give into peer pressure. I think a lot of people end up overspending simply because of peer pressure. But if you just firmly believe that these are not areas that I would get joy out of, then don't spend there. Don't waste your time or your money in those. And at the same time, make sure that you are spending in the right areas, because you have a credit score to manage. So you do have to spend somewhere, right? But just be, I think, just be personally disciplined about it. That's all.
So I agree that on one end, of course, you have to be a balanced spender, but a lot of people who have, very early on life taken on investing very seriously, they usually have a vision about their wealth also, right? Because otherwise,
Mm.
let's say you have a 1 lakh rupee surplus every month, right? Deciding between whether you should invest 50,000 a month to 70,000 a month, it requires a little bit of that understanding of what will that extra 20,000 of savings do for you, but
Mm.
also at the same time balance your spending, right? Not living a life which you constantly feel that, oh my god, I'm not being able to do
Yeah,
this, do that. And I mean, that's not what we make money for, right? We make money
correct,
for being able to live comfortably, but at the
correct.
same time have a vision of the future. So what is your wealth aspiration, Shrutkirti? Do you have a number in mind that, okay, I need to reach this number, or do you have a certain lifestyle in mind? What's your view on where you want to be in terms of wealth, let's say 20 years down the line?
That's a difficult question, honestly, because I think I don't make lofty number-related plans, right? But like you rightly asked, what is the ideal way that you would see your lifestyle? I think the way I look at it is that your changes and your personal changes, I mean, the ones that you go through at a personal level, and your personal growth, it changes how you think about life every 5 to 6 years, right? So how you envision your lifestyle maybe in your 20s is very different from what you would envision in your 30s. Things changed, maybe, life has a way of circling back to you. But yeah, I believe that rather than having a very lofty number, it's great to think about it in a way where you see that what is my inflow going to support the lifestyle I want to lead, number one. And two, if I have a surplus, and if I have investments, that I'm already managing, will they support me in case of emergencies, right? Because I think health emergencies are where most surprises happen on the financial front, right? So if these two things are pretty much in sync, then I believe you're pretty much okay, right? And as we know, health costs are increasing every day. And if you look at our lifestyle, we can at a personal level overnight choose what kind of lifestyle we want to lead. I could go from living in a medium sized bungalow to a 5 bhk penthouse, right? But then a, do I have the material for it? Two, will my lifestyle support it? Because if I'm moving to a 5 bhk penthouse, all the ancillary things associated with it will
Yes,
also need to be changed, right? So there is no end to this goal. And hence putting a number is, I think that's a very moving number. It's dynamic. You will keep changing that number every other year probably, right? So rather than having a number in mind, I believe that while I'm ambitious, I don't look for a number, and I just want to maintain this lifestyle as long as it sorts the way I look at my health as well as my family's health, and we are covered on that. And second is from a lifestyle perspective, where I'm very okay not having fancy cookware or fancy glassware, for instance, right? I love the finer things in life, but again, like I said, it's all about balance. So yeah, that would be my goal, I guess.
absolutely. That's I think a golden piece of advice. And I had this question of what advice would you give to your younger self, but I think we already have that answer.
Yeah.
And before we sign off, Shrutkirti, you have been working for a while now, right? What do you think has been your, let's say, one best financial decision and one not so good financial decision that you think you have gone through?
So I think a good financial decision that I made is that, of course, I started investing early, because, like you said,
Mm.
I do have a group of friends, and I see peers who are maybe probably much older than me, and they are not really taking that effort so much. So I think that's really good, because, well, it's just going to help me in the long run. I think I don't have any such disastrous decisions that I've made on finance per se, but I think one of the decisions that I wish I hadn't made is that I had not automated a lot of my credit card bill payments. And because I often, miss out, or maybe I end up being overseas and hence I'm not able to make those credit card payments on time, of course, you end up paying a lot of hefty fees. And needless to say, it absolutely sometimes used to balance out the points that you're making, or the savings that you're making on the card, because of this. And I think I realized that it's important to automate them, and if there are any discrepancies, those can always be resolved later, right? So I think that was a valuable lesson for me, because sometimes you don't realize, but like you said, compounding works. So even if you miss out 3 months, right, on and off, it leads to a very hefty fee, and you're just you're just losing that money for no reason.
Yeah, I think that's, I mean, credit cards is a whole different topic of discussion in terms of, I mean, there's a school of thought that you shouldn't have one, and then there's a very strong school of thought that you should definitely
Yes.
have one. And I think
Yeah.
discipline of payment is one thing that if you can enforce,
Yeah.
you tend to fall in that school of thought that you should have one. So I think
Correct.
that's a very practical piece of advice, Shrutkirti. And it was lovely talking to you. I think this conversation would be able to inspire a lot of young girls who step into the realm of work, professional life with a lot of ambitions. Because I think a lot of us talk about independence in so many forms, but I think you can only be truly independent by being financially independent, amongst other things. If you're not financially independent, but you are, let's say, you're independent from an opinion point of view, or you're physically independent, you're still dependent in so many other ways, right? So I
Absolutely.
think you do set an example there, and I'm glad to have come into touch with you, and let's meet soon.
Definitely, Shruti. My pleasure. Thank you for hosting me. And I had a lovely time speaking about this. Really glad that you are, doing this initiative. And thank you so much for having me.
Thanks, Shrutkirti. It was lovely talking to you.